The chapter opens with the girl pleading with God for another opportunity at life. Upon awakening the following day, she was taken aback to discover that everything had reverted back. This realization caused the girl to become anxious and distressed. Subsequently, the narrative introduces us to the tale of Bianca d'Arno, who is widely renowned both in her homeland and beyond. Count Zachary d'Arno is her husband, who is a loyal vassal of the King of Severn and an aide to the heir apparent, Prince Gaudier. On each occasion that the Count endangered himself in combat, Lady Bianca would don a fresh dress and procure exquisite wares from the kingdom's artisans and jewelers. However, there was an instance where she secluded herself in her chamber and went into a fit of wild screaming, causing her to demolish all the costly furnishings. After 4 days had elapsed, 2 maids strolled along the hallway. While one of them proposed entering Bianca's quarters to check on her state, the other maid declined as she believed that Arno's lands were enduring hardship due to Bianca's actions. Arno was a region where the ruling authority frequently shifted, which resulted in the populace bearing the brunt of such instability. However, everything took a turn for the better when Zachary assumed control. Upon his ascension, the situation began to stabilize. The Count amassed considerable wealth through his participation in the war, and it appeared that he could employ this wealth to ensure the prosperity of all those residing in the land. Nevertheless, the only individual who squandered the Count's earnings was his extravagant spouse. Meanwhile, within her chamber, Bianca was engrossed in sewing lace, a skill she had acquired during her stay in the monastery. Abruptly, she emerged from her room and made her way towards Vincent, the Arno family's butler. Upon arriving at his quarters, Bianca inquired about her age for the upcoming year. Vincent responded by stating that the young lady would be turning 18 years old. The young lady inquired about the Count's whereabouts, to which the servant informed her that Zachary was presently engaged in war and would not return until winter. Upon learning this, she requested that Vincent procure a fox fur for her, as the weather had turned frigid. The butler could not refuse her plea, as he had sworn an oath to the Count to fulfill all of Bianca's desires. Following a while, Vincent arrived with the requested fur, and the girl expressed her admiration for it. The butler also informed her that a new message had arrived that morning, indicating that the Count was on his way back. Subsequently, the girl proceeded to the balcony and made a vow to live her life rightly and avoid repeating her past mistakes. Not long after, the Count returned to Arno and, upon gazing through his binoculars, observed his wife shouting something towards the sky. As he entered the castle grounds, a wave of jubilation swept over everyone, for the Iron Count, Zachary d'Arno, had returned. He had acquired this moniker during a battle with the enemy. His silver hair had become drenched in the foe's blood, and he appeared as though he were a finely crafted sword. To the enemy, his silver hair was their greatest source of dread. Upon reaching the palace entrance, Vincent greeted the Count and informed him that the banquet hall was being readied for a feast. The Count expressed his gratitude to all those who had contributed and urged them to indulge in the feast to their heart's content. Later, the narrative shifts towards 3 commanders of the Arno army, Saboro, Caspar, and Robert. Saboro started to boast about his valiant deed on the battlefield, recounting how he had saved Robert by deflecting an arrow aimed towards his comrade with his sword. Suddenly, Bianca emerged from behind and inquired about the Count's whereabouts. Saboro informed her that Zachary had gone upstairs to his room to take a quick shower. Upon her departure, the boys were taken aback by what they saw, for Bianca had grown considerably since they last saw her. She had previously only reached their waist, but now she was almost their height. On that day, the lady had something important to discuss with the Count, and without hesitation, she entered his room. As she opened the door, she saw a man before her who was in the process of removing his shirt. Zachary inquired if she had something to say, and the girl responded that she had heard of his return and had come to see him because she was, after all, his wife. Bianca instructed Vincent to leave them alone because she needed to have a private conversation with her husband. Vincent complied and left the room. The Count asked Bianca what she wanted to discuss. Bianca stated that it had been 9 years since they had gotten married, and she had decided to fulfill her duty as a wife, which was to give birth to the next heir of Count Arno. Zachary asked Bianca if she knew how to conceive a child, and she confidently replied that she had learned enough from the maids and knew what to do. However, the Count, feeling tired after his journey, told her that they would discuss the matter later. This made Bianca anxious because she knew that without a child, she would have to continue to endure a difficult life. She pleaded with him not to leave and asked about the dowry that had been promised to her family upon their marriage. The Count responded that their marriage had a dowry of 100 silver cups, 2 chests of jewels, and a portion of land. It was equivalent to the Arnault family's budget for 2 years. Bianca then asked about the meaning of the dowry, and the Count explained that it was the money and assets brought by the bride to the groom's home as a form of inheritance from her family to support her after marriage. Bianca realized that the rumors she had heard about the Count having a mistress were true. She understood that in some cases, if the groom returns the bride and marries another, he must return the entire dowry along with her. However, she told the Count not to worry about it because she didn't require a divorce and he could continue to see his mistress. The Count dismissed Bianca's request, calling it nonsense, and ordered Vincent to escort her to her room. Despite her protests, he refused to listen to her. Once alone, Zachary reflected on past situations where he sought comfort from Bianca after battles, only for her to avoid him due to the scent of blood on him. As if nothing had happened, Bianca grabbed the Count and began discussing their air. He was surprised because he had not yet bathed and still smelled of blood. He wondered what had changed while he was away. Meanwhile, in the corridor, Bianca was yearning to have a child with the Count because, according to a prophecy, he was destined to die in 7 years. Vincent offered to escort the lady to her room, but she declined, insisting that she could manage on her own. Alone in her room, Bianca's thoughts turned to the Count's lover. She worried that the Count might return her and her dowry to Blanchefort, especially since he had mentioned it earlier. Suddenly, the Count appeared behind her and draped her forgotten fur coat over her shoulders. As they walked, Zachary expressed his gratitude towards Bianca for their conversation earlier, but she was confused as to why he was thanking her. She wondered if he was referring to the expensive fox fur coat she had recently acquired. However, she wasn't sure if his comment was meant sarcastically. In reality, the Count was thanking her for their first meeting since his return home. Bianca realized that if she had more opportunities to interact with the Count and talk to him, his opinion regarding the desired successor could change. The following day at Arnault Castle, an unprecedented commotion broke out as everyone began talking about Bianca and her actions from the previous day. They were all taken aback because it was the first time that the girl had acted in such a manner. As the maids were cleaning the floor, they started gossiping about Bianca and the Count. They were happy that Bianca had finally changed and could bear a child, but one maid was not pleased and called Bianca a melancholic woman. She even claimed that she could please the Count better than Bianca ever could. The maid kept talking negatively about Bianca, but was suddenly interrupted by the lady herself. Bianca had overheard the conversation and struck the maid hard across the face in response to her insulting remarks. Bianca ordered another maid to bring a cane and warned her opponent that she was in a foul mood that day. She took the cane and began striking the maid's hands. Witnesses to the altercation decided to report it to the butler. As Bianca prepared to strike again, Robert intervened and stopped her. Robert was surprised that she didn't recognize him, as he was a well-known commander and highly regarded by all in Arnault. After Robert stopped Bianca from striking the maid, he took the cane from her and advised her to refrain from such behavior in the future. However, Bianca explained that she did it because the maid was insulting her and attempting to enter the Count's room. In the meantime, the Count heard the commotion and made his way to the hallway where a crowd had gathered. The chambermaid, who was at the center of the commotion, was relieved and confident that the Count would assist her, as he was known to be a good person. She recalled a time when a man stole half a bag of wheat, and instead of punishing him by cutting off his hand, the Count ordered him to bring a whole bag of wheat the following year. When the Count arrived in the hallway and saw the commotion, he asked about the state of Bianca's hand. She had bloody scars on her hands from hitting the maid, and the Count immediately ordered Vincent to call a doctor to treat her wounds. Bianca declined the offer of medical attention, suggesting that the maid whom the Count had defended might benefit from it more. With that, she left, insisting that she did not require any medical help. The Count then approached the chambermaid to inquire about the incident, but she claimed that she was only cleaning in the hallway and did not say or do anything wrong. After the Count left, he instructed the butler to quell the rumors. Following his departure, the butler instructed the maid to gather her belongings and leave the castle because of her loose tongue. He then approached Robert and inquired, "What are you doing here?" Robert explained that he had come to intervene with Bianca, but upon learning that the maid had insulted her, he supported Bianca's actions. Robert was surprised that the Countess had taken such a strong stance against the maid, but acknowledged that it was within her rights as mistress of the castle. He also noted that Bianca had been changing her attitude towards Arno lately. Meanwhile, in her room, Bianca was nursing her injured hand and feeling resentful towards the maid. She imagined the Count comforting the maid and kissing her hands, and started to worry that the maid would take her place as the Count's wife. Out of nowhere, a young woman entered the room and offered to prepare a soothing compress for Bianca's hands, assuring her that the pain would ease soon. As the maid worked on the compress, Bianca remembered the words of her old nanny, who had advised her to always be the first to extend her hand to someone who showed understanding. The Countess inquired about the girl's name, to which the maid introduced herself as Yvonne. Bianca asked Yvonne to return the following day to make another compress. Yvonne felt delighted to have something she could do for the lady. The story then shifts 10 years back to the capital of Severin, Laos. In the distance, a man called out to the Count, asking if he is the son of Viscount Vig. The Count clarified that his older brother had taken over the title of Viscount and head of the family 3 years prior, and he is now the lord of the Arno estate. The man identified himself as Postave de Blanchefort. The Count acknowledged Blanchefort's connection to the heir prince and expressed his regret for not being aware of Blanchefort's status before. Blanchefort reassured the Count that there was no offense taken and asked if they could talk for a while. They settled in the garden and sipped their tea while Blanchefort revealed that he had served the Severin king with unwavering loyalty until now and had complete faith in the heir prince Gaudier's ability to rule. Blanchefort then made a proposal to the Count, offering him the position of the sword of the first heir prince. The Count humbly protested, saying that he was not worthy of such a significant role and that there were better candidates. But Blanchefort insisted that he had made his decision and that the future of Severin rested on Zachary's shoulders. Blanchefort then told the Count about the dangers threatening Severin and how the country needed a strong leader like Gaudier to survive. The Count listened intently, realizing the importance of the role Blanchefort was offering him. After some reflection, the Count agreed to become the sword of the heir prince and pledged his loyalty to him and Severin. The Count expressed his agreement and mentioned that he had been considering marriage. Blanchefort was delighted because he had a daughter and proposed that if Zachary married her, he would offer all his connections and wealth to support him. Despite the transactional nature of the proposal, it was difficult for Zachary to refuse, and thus he agreed to the marriage. The woman he married was Bianca, who became his precious wife through this business deal. Upon hastily summoning 3 captains on the evening when the maid Auntie was expelled, the Count led them to his chambers. The men, assuming they were being called to return to the battlefield, followed him in silence. However, when they arrived, the Count revealed that there was something much more pressing than war. He instructed one of the captains to accompany and protect his wife, emphasizing the importance of her safety. The captains were taken aback by the Count's request to protect his wife, who seemed to spend all her time in her room. However, the Count explained that he wanted the person he trusted most to be by Bianca's side, ensuring her safety and protection at all times because she was a precious person to him. The following day, Yvonne returned to Bianca's room to apply a healing compress, and Bianca expressed her gratitude to the maid for motivating her to wake up early in the morning. After changing her clothes, Bianca and Yvonne walked down the hallway, but Bianca mentioned feeling cold. Yvonne hurried back to the room to retrieve a fox fur for the Countess. Bianca approached Vincent and inquired if he was responsible for managing the internal affairs of Arno. Vincent confirmed that he was indeed tasked with handling Arno's internal affairs. Bianca had raised the question because she knew that traditionally the hostess, the wife of the Count, would take on this responsibility, but due to her young age, she had not been able to do so. However, now that she was 18, she felt ready to take an active role in managing the household affairs. She requested that Vincent teach her how to manage the chores and responsibilities. Vincent was surprised by this sudden change in Bianca's behavior, as he had observed that she used to spend extravagantly, but now her expenses had decreased, and she was keen on restoring order and discipline in the castle. Vincent agreed and suggested to the lady that they take a walk around the entire Arno estate while he explained the management. Bianca was eager to learn so that she could prove to the Count that she had changed. As they walked, Vincent informed her that one of the 3 young men would protect and accompany her, as per the Count's orders. However, Bianca refused, stating that she didn't need a bodyguard. Vincent reiterated that it was the Count's wish, and no one would watch over her except for the appointed guard. Bianca felt disheartened knowing that her every move would be monitored and reported back to the Count. Casper offered to be Bianca's bodyguard, and Vincent announced that he would be her protector from now on. Suddenly, the Count appeared, touched Bianca's face, and told her to come to his room. Everyone was pleased to see the Count accompanying his wife for the first time. As they walked down the hallway, Bianca was worried that the Count would make her apologize to the maid she had slapped. However, Zachary informed her that he had already fired the maid the day before and clarified that he had no lover. Confused, Bianca asked him why he had assigned her a security guard if he didn't want a successor. The Count explained that assigning a bodyguard to Bianca was simply a precautionary measure to prevent any future incidents when she walks alone. Later that evening, Vincent discussed Bianca's progress with the commanders and the Count. He asked the Count what they had discussed when he took Bianca to his room. The Count revealed that Bianca had accused him of having a lover. Vincent then inquired about Bianca's correspondence with Blanchefort, but the Count assured him that she had not sent or received any letters. The Count instructed Vincent to continue teaching Bianca how to manage the estate so that she could be prepared for the upcoming spring. He also expressed his desire to take Bianca with him to the capital, Laos. His companions were puzzled by the Count's intention. Suddenly, Robert had an epiphany that the Count's motive for bringing Bianca to Laos was to have an heir with her. However, the Count dismissed the topic and insisted that the trip had nothing to do with that. A few days later, the Countess made a full recovery and began learning how to manage the estate. Vincent showed her around the Arno estate and Bianca recollected her past memories of walking through the lands and forests. Vincent took her to a high ground and explained the state of the lands, pointing out different areas of interest. He then took her to the sewing workshop and demonstrated how embroidery was made for clothing. 2 workers were overheard discussing Bianca's weight, but she didn't take offense and instead asked one of them to come see her the next day with their work. The seamstress was relieved to find out that Bianca was pleased with her work and not upset with her. Vincent then led the way to the butcher shop and a candle-making factory, surprising Bianca with the existence of a candle factory in Arno. Bianca was eager to see how candles were made and learned that they were made from resin and pig fat. The candle maker even gave one to the Countess as a gift. The group planned to depart, but they came across a young boy who had cut his finger. The guard initially suspected that Niccolo was responsible for harming Bianca, but it turned out that the boy was simply hiding from the shepherd. Bianca instructed Yvonne to examine the boy's wound and treat it. Curious about Niccolo's actions, Bianca investigated and discovered that he had carved the face of God onto the candle. The boy explained that God had visited him in a dream and told him that he was trapped inside the candle and asked him to save him. That's why Niccolo had been digging into the candle. Bianca asked if the boy had any training in candle carving, but the man replied that Niccolo's parents were a shepherd and a maid, and he had no such training. This young boy came from a poor family, and as a result, he was expected to become a shepherd like his father. However, he had recently started to damage the candles. Vincent suggested punishing Niccolo, as it could be viewed as theft. But Bianca stood up for the boy and asked him to come and see her the next day. The following day, 2 individuals were summoned to the castle by Bianca, though they felt that they would be better off beaten than invited there. At the door, Yvonne greeted them and led them to the Countess. As they walked down the hallway, Niccolo expressed his gratitude to Yvonne for treating his finger wound the day before. Auntie had packed her belongings to leave the castle, but suddenly she appeared and confronted Yvonne, accusing her of being a traitor. The other servants assumed that Bianca had expelled Auntie based on Yvonne's request, and as a result, Yvonne was met with hostile stares from the other maids. Despite this, Yvonne led the guests to the Duchess's room, where Bianca was surprised to see them arrive so early. Bianca approached the seamstress and offered to teach her how to weave lace. She then spoke with Nicola about his behavior and punishment. Nicola expected to be severely punished, but Bianca surprised him by opening a chest and giving him beeswax candles to carve silhouettes on and return to her. Nicola was relieved because he had thought that Bianca would banish him from the lands of Arno as punishment. The Countess expressed her belief in the potential of the seamstresses and the boy, and said that she wanted to invest in their talent as they could create beautiful and valuable products. She further stated her intention to turn this into a profitable business venture. Countess Bianca started teaching the seamstresses how to weave lace, explaining that it is a new fashion trend that will soon become popular in Severin and surrounding areas. She anticipated that lace would become a stylish accessory that would enhance the wearer's elegance. Afterward, Bianca approached Vincent and assigned him a task regarding the boy and the seamstress. The butler was taken aback by the Countess's decision to provide expensive materials for the boy, but she explained that Nicola had a remarkable talent and could create unmatched beauty with them. She also mentioned that spending money on exquisite and valuable items brought her joy, so the cost was not an issue. Bianca further instructed to provide the seamstress with linen thread. As Vincent stepped out into the hallway, he felt disheartened by the Countess's tendency to splurge on lavish items once more. After some time, Yvonne's winter clothing accidentally caught fire. A kind woman approached the maid and offered her own clothes. When Bianca saw Yvonne in the light coat, she was surprised and asked what had happened. Yvonne explained that her own clothes had burned and that she had to wear something else. Bianca told her to take the old squirrel fur coat and wear it. She added that she wants Yvonne to always look her best and be by her side. Without hesitation, the girl put on the fur coat and thanked the Countess. They then went to Vincent, who decided to show them the pastures. He explained that the sheep and cattle are fed with hay collected in the autumn, but the horses are allowed to graze in the winter. This is because the Count wants to cultivate strength in the horses so they can withstand the cold. Bianca spotted the Count riding on horseback in the distance, and she was surprised to see him riding in such cold weather without adequate clothing. Later on, the group arrived at the stables, where Saboro was taking care of the horses. The military only kept a large number of war horses here during August. Saboro spoke highly of the Count, stating that he had purchased war horses right from the start, leading to victories in all battles he engaged in. The Countess asked if there was a horse she could ride, which took Saboro by surprise. He questioned whether she knew how to ride a horse, to which she responded that it was not a problem and that she could learn. Upon hearing Vincent's warning, Bianca insisted on obtaining the Count's permission to learn horseback riding. They left the stable and continued their walk. In the meantime, Robert approached Saboro and expressed his surprise at the Countess's sudden interest in horseback riding. Later that evening, Bianca went to see the seamstress's first lacework and was delighted by its beauty. Out of nowhere, the girl sensed a hand on her braids. Assuming it was Yvonne, who had offered to help her dry her hair, she spun around only to be taken aback by the sight of the Count. Acting on impulse, she leaned in to kiss her husband, but Zachary swiftly recoiled, explaining that he had come to her room to ask her something and noticed her wet hair, so he took it upon himself to dry it and prevent her from falling ill. Bianca was infuriated and demanded to know what he wanted to ask her at such a late hour. The Count inquired about Casper's performance and whether Bianca was satisfied with his work. Bianca confirmed that Casper was indeed performing well and also wished to ask the Count something. She offered to join him on the couch and revealed her desire to learn horseback riding. When Bianca expressed her desire to learn horseback riding, the Count warned her that it was a physically demanding sport requiring considerable strength. However, Bianca was undaunted and retorted that something being difficult did not mean it was impossible. Acknowledging her determination, the Count suggested that she commence her training in the spring instead of the winter, as it would be challenging to find suitable ponies now. Bianca felt a sense of accomplishment as she had persuaded the Count for the first time. As their conversation continued, the Count mentioned his upcoming engagement ceremony in the capital, Laos, for Prince Albert, the first prince's heir. He also noted that this summer marked the 50th anniversary of his coronation as king, and consequently, there would be numerous events held to commemorate the occasion. The Count's journey to Laos was expected to be a prolonged one, as it was not an easy trip from Arno. He disclosed that he intended to return to Arno in the fall or early winter. Upon hearing this, Bianca's spirits sank, realizing that she would be left alone once again, unable to produce an heir and risking expulsion from the castle. Overcome with emotion, Bianca wept, but the Count's sudden announcement that he intended to bring her along to Laos lifted her spirits. He promised that she would enjoy herself as various lavish items were on display in Laos. Bianca readily agreed to this proposal. The following day, Vincent informed Saburo and Robert that Bianca had declined to attend to her usual household duties as she had other pressing matters to attend to. Vincent reported that Bianca had been preoccupied with a seamstress lately and insisted on completing it before spring. Robert was puzzled by her motives and wondered why it was necessary to finish it by then. The butler also revealed that Bianca had plans to accompany the Count to Laos, which surprised Robert. In the Count's office, Saburo inquired about who would provide protection during their trip. Zahari informed him that according to Bianca, Casper was more than capable of handling that responsibility. As the Count gazed out the window, he reminisced about his wife's kind words from the previous night, expressing her gratitude for taking her to the capital with him. As several months passed and spring approached, Nicola overheard a conversation between two workers in the fields. They mentioned that they had not seen the Countess for some time and that she had secluded herself in her room again, summoning women to converse with her. Upon hearing the workers gossiping about the Countess, Nicola became defensive and shouted at them, insisting that they didn't know anything about her. This led to an argument, and the boy eventually left to continue with his tasks. He then went inside the house where the seamstresses were working and asked if the Countess was there. The maid informed him that Bianca had not yet arrived and allowed him to enter. While conversing with the maids, they began to speak highly of the Countess, praising her kindness and compassion. One of the women asked Nicola why he had come, and he showed them a newly carved candle that he wanted to present to the Countess before showing it to the butler. The maids were impressed by the beauty of the candle. Meanwhile, Bianca was in her room, lost in thought about her past when she married the Count and became a prominent figure in Arno. She also reminisced about her first love. As the room's door swung open, the Count appeared and proposed a stroll. As they walked, he deliberately slowed down to accommodate the Countess. Upon reaching a hill, the Count gestured towards a spot where Bianca's eyes caught sight of a horse, filling her with delight. She was so overjoyed that words failed her. The Count picked up his wife and helped her onto the horse, stating that he would personally teach her to ride starting from the next day. Grateful, Bianca suggested he ask Vincent to arrange for a riding instructor, but the Count refused, insisting that she wasn't taking up his time. They then headed towards the seamstresses, with the Count questioning Bianca about lace. She explained that although it was made from inexpensive materials, it ultimately transformed into a beautiful and valuable object. Bianca expressed that her actions could have significant global implications beyond the continent, as she aimed to earn enough money to gain independence. The Count was pleasantly surprised, but cautioned that it was too early to think about succession. Suddenly, Bianca recalled a story she had heard about Zachary Arno, who, at 16, was kicked out of his family but went on to build his own life and become skilled in sword fighting. Bianca asked the Count if he had been worried about her all along, but before he could respond, a maid interrupted and announced that Nicola was waiting for Bianca. The Count offered to take the horse and asked Bianca to name it, her first homework assignment for horseback riding. In a subsequent scene, the capital city of Laos is showcased, where Jacob and a woman are seen sharing a kiss. Soon after, a servant informs Jacob that Zachary de Arno and his wife will be arriving in Laos. Jacob expresses excitement, remarking that this spring would be intriguing. At the time, the emperor had 3 children, with the first queen taking care of the first prince, Gautier, and Princess Odeli, while the second queen looked after the second prince, Jacob. As per the long-standing tradition of primogeniture, it was expected that the first prince, Gautier, would be the next emperor of Severin. While standing in the hallway, Count Blanchefort approaches Jacob and introduces his son, Ivan. Jacob informs the Count that he had heard some interesting news. Count Arno and his wife would be visiting the capital this time. Jacob then inquires if it was the Count's daughter who was married off to an adult knight at the age of 9. He also mentions that his mother was worried about her distant relative, the Countess Blanchefort's daughter, marrying a baron whom she did not know. In response, Blanchefort informed Jacob that the same baron was now a count and the most prominent warrior and landowner on the continent. As a result, when Prince Gautier became emperor, no one would be able to oppose Severin's power. Jacob expressed his eagerness to meet this great hero in person and even expressed his desire to meet the Countess if given the opportunity. Blanchefort instructed Ivan to return home and send a letter to Arnaud, requesting to meet with Bianca before anyone else upon their arrival in the capital. Ivan was delighted as he hadn't seen his sister for over a decade. In Arnaud, Bianca rode a horse for the first time, and although she grew tired, the Count expressed his approval, stating that her endurance would increase with practice. Bianca named the horse Isabelle and promised to meet her again the next day. The lady and the Count continued to spend time together until they set off for Laos. The following day, Zachary was teaching Bianca how to ride again, and she boldly claimed that she would soon become a better rider than the Count. Zachary smiled and accepted the challenge. There are rumors circulating about the lady's mysterious actions with the seamstresses and the recent use of luxurious wax candles in large quantities. Alongside these rumors, there are also whispers of a good relationship between the Count and Bianca, and a peculiar sense of expectation among the estate's inhabitants that they may have a successor soon. At around the same time, a letter from Count Blanchefort arrived, surprising Zachary as it was only the second letter received from him in the past decade. After reading the letter, the Count decided to inform Bianca of its contents himself and asked Vincent to keep the information confidential. In his quarters, the Count pondered whether it was appropriate to allow Bianca to reunite with her estranged family after 9 years of separation. The day before their departure for Laos, everyone in Arnaud Castle was occupied with packing their belongings. Upon opening the Count's suitcase, Bianca was taken aback to find that he had only packed a shirt and a jacket. The Countess was displeased, feeling that her husband's wardrobe did not align with Bianca's refined taste. In response, she instructed Vincent to open all of Zachary's trunks and select his best garments. Bianca even went so far as to purchase new clothing for the Count, as his previous attire was deemed too rustic. As the Count observed the proceedings from his quarters, he could not help but laugh. However, his attention was quickly drawn to Saboro, who was seen approaching Bianca. Intrigued, the Count watched as Saboro spoke with his wife. Ultimately, Saboro requested permission to take possession of the Count's clothing, and to the Count's surprise, the Countess acquiesced. Following this, the Count retreated to his chamber and made a solemn promise to himself that he would use all his might to ensure that Bianca never experienced any form of suffering. As evening approached, Bianca embarked on a lengthy and arduous journey in a carriage, pondering all the while about the moment she would eventually converse with the Count. Meanwhile, the Count mounted his horse and led everyone to Laos, departing through the gates. Several days have passed since the Count and the lady left for Laos. In the sewing room, the butler arrived bearing gold and linen threads requested by the seamstresses on their last visit. One of the seamstresses recollected Bianca's words, in which she urged them to continue making new lace since there would soon be potential buyers arriving in Arnaud with a great demand for it. Subsequently, these women would no longer be mere seamstresses, but proud masters of lace in Arnaud. The Countess instructed Nicola to visit the church and express gratitude to God for the gifted craftsmen of Arnaud. Her words instilled hope in everyone for the safe return of the Countess, who had recognized their talents and invested in them. However, their journey was hindered by the poor road condition, forcing the Count to halt their progress and seek an alternative route the next day. Bianca and Ivan disembarked from the carriage, and Saboro approached them, offering to take the Countess for a stroll under his escort. Suddenly, Robert emerged from behind and informed Bianca that the Count was waiting for her. She proceeded to join her husband, and he suggested they take a walk together towards the source of the Arno River. Bianca mentioned that Saboro had also expressed interest in taking her to this location. Upon hearing this, the Count's jealousy was aroused, as he learned that the Countess had become close friends with Saboro. In response, the girl urged the Count not to be jealous, and they decided to head back to their carriage. During their journey, The Count inquired about Bianca's relationship with her brother Ivan. She replied that her brother was a kind and caring individual who took care of her after their mother passed away during childbirth. She also mentioned that Ivan resembled their father and had not contacted her for over a decade. Bianca recounted a past incident where her father discussed her future wedding with the Count during dinner. At the time, she was unaware of what a wedding entailed, so she simply listened calmly. Not understanding the situation, she took the Count's hand and left the Blanchefort family. Bianca shared with the Count about her father's loyalty to the prince as he fought against the Aragonese invasion on behalf of his son-in-law and master. Her brother Ivan had taken his father's place in battle, leading to the downfall of the Blanchefort lineage. The Count then disclosed that he had received a letter from the Blanchefort family expressing their desire to meet with Bianca. During their conversation, the Count attempted to kiss Bianca, but their moment was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Ivan. The maid informed them that they would be spending the night there. Bianca suggested that they sleep together in the carriage, but the Count insisted on sleeping outside with everyone else. As they departed, the Count promised to continue their conversation later. After 10 long days of travel, they finally arrived at Laos, the capital of Severin, which had been a fortress between Aragon and Castile for over a century. The Severin family's flag, resembling a white mountain, was hoisted on the spire as they approached the castle gates. Upon their arrival, the Count ordered the gates to be opened, and everyone present praised his bravery and courage. To reach the city center, they had to pass through 3 more gates, but eventually, the guests from Arno arrived at the Laos castle. They were then led to the castle gardens, which were tended to by Princess Odeli and the first prince. Upon their arrival, the guests were warmly welcomed by Victor, the Emperor of Severin. Standing beside him was his son, Gautier Severin, who greeted Bianca with a bouquet of flowers. Victor then discussed their accommodations for the night, which included the North Towers, known for being the most picturesque location within the castle of Laos. As they made their way towards the tower, Bianca found herself thinking about the second prince, Jacob. According to past predictions, Gautier and the Count would perish, and all power would eventually pass to Jacob. Suddenly, she bumped into a man who turned out to be none other than Jacob, the second prince of Severin, who was destined to seize power both in Severin and across the continent. As they made their way towards the tower, Jacob crossed paths with them and welcomed them to Severin. During their conversation, Jacob offered his assistance in case they encountered any issues in the capital. Shortly after, Bianca and the Count bid farewell and left. Zachary cautioned the girl to avoid Jacob at all costs as he was a malevolent individual. Bianca immediately recollected a past incident involving Prince Jacob and scandals, the most infamous of which was his secret collusion with his adversary Aragon for over 2 decades. After seizing control of Severin, it was discovered that the Aragonese invasion was a ruse orchestrated by Jacob. As he ascended to the throne of Severin, Jacob required a strong alliance with Aragon, leading to his marriage to a princess from Aragon. The memory of Fernan, who departed after the Count's demise, also resurfaced in the girl's mind. Bianca apologized to Zachary for not paying attention to his words earlier as she was lost in thought. To divert their attention from the encounter with the second prince, Bianca and the Count engaged in idle chatter. Unbeknownst to them, this meeting marked the beginning of a bitter animosity between Jacob and Zachary. Yvonne greeted them upon arrival at the tower and proceeded to show them to their room. Upon seeing their quarters, the couple was taken aback by its stunning and intricate interior design. Yvonne then directed their attention to the bed where they would sleep. Bianca was taken aback by the fact that she would be sharing a bed with the Count. She had not anticipated their intimate encounter to occur so suddenly. Later that evening, as she emerged from the bath, her thoughts turned towards getting pregnant from the Count at the earliest opportunity. Upon entering the room, the Count sat next to her and took her hand, causing her to imagine a romantic scene. However, the Count suddenly cried out, and Bianca realized that it was all a figment of her imagination. She inquired as to which side of the bed he would prefer to sleep on, to which Zachary replied that he had a separate, designated room. Upon hearing this, Bianca sank sadly onto the bed, prompting the Count to console her. He then suggested that they finish their earlier conversation regarding her meeting with her father, Count Blanchefort. Bianca expressed her eagerness to meet him as soon as possible. In the evening, Bianca requested Yvonne to arrange fresh clothes for the Count to wear the following day when they meet with Blanchefort. Bianca aimed to demonstrate her improved lifestyle compared to when she relied on Blanchefort's dowry money. Yvonne pledged to find the finest tailor in Laos to create an impeccable suit for the Count. After expressing her gratitude, Bianca retired to bed. As time passed, Bianca matured into a woman, but her childhood memories of the Blanchefort family remained vivid. The next day, Arnaud, the messenger, traveled to the Blanchefort's home situated in the heart of Laos to deliver a letter from the Count. Gustave's son informed Arnaud that Bianca and the Count had arrived in Laos and planned to meet in 2 days. Unexpectedly, a butler entered the room to inform Blanchefort and Ivan that a guest was waiting for them in the living room. The Count and Ivan were taken aback as they had not expected any visitors so early in the day. To their surprise, it was the second Prince Jacob who had arrived at the estate. Upon their introduction, Jacob presented the Count with a bouquet of flowers that he had purchased from a florist. The prince began to express his discontent, stating that despite being better looking than his siblings, he did not receive the same level of acceptance from them. Furthermore, he expressed confusion as to why he was not invited to a meeting between the Emperor and Count Arnaud and his wife in the Odeli garden. He speculated that someone may have purposely prevented him from attending the meeting with the Count and Countess Arnaud. As Gustave listened to Jacob's complaints, he suddenly recollected how he had previously requested the first prince to delay the meeting between Jacob and Bianca by 1 day. This realization made Gustave understand that Jacob was aware that Blanchefort had a hand in the situation. Jacob continued to speak, highlighting that there was no place in Laos where his influence and power could not reach. He admitted to feeling envious of his brother in the past and shared that he too had a person whom he desired to keep as a lifelong friend, just like the relationship between Blanchefort and Gautier. Jacob revealed that this person was none other than Zachary de Wigg, the second son of Viscount Wigg, who had swiftly risen to the ranks of war hero. Unfortunately, Zachary had gotten married, received a title, a new name, and land, causing Jacob to miss the opportunity to become his closest friend. When facing Gustave, the prince expressed his desire to befriend Zachary this time, noting that both Count Arnaud and his beautiful wife had won him over. As Jacob exited the room, Blanchefort bid him farewell and Ivan entered. Gustave remarked to Ivan that Jacob's character reminded him of his mother, the second empress. He recounted a scandalous story known to all in Sévrin, in which the second empress had secretly hidden in the king's bed and bore a child with him, who became Jacob, the second prince. This affair nearly destroyed the relationship between the king and his first empress, leading him to send the second empress to marry a viscount. Despite this, the king still did everything in his power to reconcile with the first empress. Princess Odeli was the product of the affair, and the emperor's deep love for her was a reflection of this. The initial empress passed away while giving birth, while the second one returned to Laos and remained near the king, but he never reciprocated her love. Eventually, she realized that she would never achieve her desires and passed away, leaving their son in the emperor's care. After enduring many trials, Jacob de Sévrin became the prince of the land. He spent some time gazing at a portrait of Bianca that he had pilfered from the Blanchefort estate. Following that, he informed the Viscount that he had looked into the matter and discovered that there was no personal connection between Arnaud and Blanchefort. During this time, Jacob advised the Viscount to seek out the weak spots of these two families and employ them judiciously, thereby ensuring that not only his brother's estate but also his brother's assets would become entirely his own. While Bianca slumbered, she experienced a dream where she and her father materialized. Despite her yearning to return to Blanchefort, her father forbade it. Upon awakening, she found the Count standing over her, concerned for her well-being as she was not in the best of health. Her condition deteriorated further as she was apprehensive about reuniting with her family. Summoning her courage, she began to ready herself for the meeting. Yvonne proposed applying powder to Bianca's complexion to alleviate her pallor, prompting the Count to offer his services. With the task accomplished, the couple made their way to the meeting. During the journey to the living room, Bianca's legs trembled once more, causing the Count to wonder if he would respond similarly upon encountering his brother, who had expelled him from the Whig family. Upon entering the living room, Gustav and his sibling beheld Bianca for the first time in a lengthy period. Blanchefort approached the Count and commended him for his success in the war, urging him to continue defending Severin as the Emperor held the Count in high esteem. Upon hearing this, Bianca realized that her father was not interested in meeting with her, but rather with the Count. Overcome with emotion, she burst into tears and asked if her father even cared about her or her life. This was the sorrow that she had repressed for a decade, but her father's aloofness proved too much for the Countess to bear, and she erupted in anger. Yvonne and Caspar observed this with pity for Bianca. Meanwhile, Saboro and Robert decided to investigate what was transpiring as they made their way down the corridor. During the conversation, Bianca became overwhelmed and began shouting at her father, denouncing their marriage as a fruitless agreement. Upon hearing this, Zachary realized that Bianca had no other recourse and was doing her utmost to conceive an heir as quickly as possible. During the winter, she dedicated herself to studying the lands of Arno, striving to become an indispensable member of the estate by learning how to manage it effectively. Bianca was determined to prove her worth and avoid being cast out of Arno, just as Viscount Vig had once exiled Zachary. The Count attempted to console his wife, noting that Bianca was a true reflection of her mother, but with even greater determination. He revealed that he had sent his daughter away at a young age precisely because he knew she would thrive in such an environment. Gustav also admitted that he had refrained from contacting Arno for a decade out of fear that his paternal heart could not withstand the cruelty of his decision to send Bianca away. His words moved Blanchefort to tears. Upon hearing this, Bianca expressed her deep longing for her father and brother. Ivan, moved by her emotions, embraced her tightly and professed his love for her. The Count and Bianca subsequently departed from the drawing room, with the latter expressing gratitude for the Count's unwavering support. Following this heartwarming reunion, the Arno and Blanchefort families began to communicate more frequently, with Bianca and the Count enjoying more dinners and visits to each other's residences. Despite restoring her relationship with her family, Bianca found herself growing concerned about her relationship with the Count, who had become as aloof as ever. During one dinner, Gustav revealed to the Count that Jacob had taken an interest in him after he had received his title. The Count went on to disclose that Jacob had also shown an interest in Bianca, prompting Blanchefort to take steps to prevent his daughter from meeting the second prince. The following day, Gustav discovered that his approach had failed. Later, when Jacob visited the Blanchefort household, one of Bianca's childhood portraits went missing from the shelf, which was no mere coincidence. Gustav cautioned them against trusting Jacob while they were in Laos' capital city. As they rode in the carriage, Bianca noticed that the second prince had taken an interest in her. Suddenly, she fell ill, and the Count ordered the carriage to stop. Bianca attributed it to having lost her appetite after dinner, and the Count proposed they take a stroll together. Meanwhile, Caspar procured some confections and treated Yvonne. They spent the rest of the day consuming sweets and awaiting the Count and lady's return, completely unaware of what was happening with them at the moment. Meanwhile, Bianca and Arno took a walk in Bianca's favorite spot, where they chanced upon Jacob. Suddenly, Viscount Vig, the same brother who had expelled the Count from his ancestral estate, appeared. We are then transported back in time to a scene where Vincent informs Zachary that the Viscount had ordered him to remove all of Zachary's possessions from the estate. The Viscount summoned Zachary to his chamber and reminded him that once he became the next Viscount, he would immediately evict Zachary from the estate, a moment that had now come to pass. The Count was baffled by his brother's behavior, and Roland explained that since Zachary's birth, no one in the castle had taken care of him. As a result, Roland developed animosity towards his younger brother, eventually driving him out of the estate. Vincent chose to side with Zachary and assist the Count, and that is how the Count encountered his family for the first time in 13 years, in a location he never could have imagined. Jacob feigned ignorance of the boy's brotherhood. To everyone's surprise, Bianca grasped her husband's hand, offering him the support he needed in this unexpected situation. Memories from her past life resurfaced, reminding her that Viscount Roland de Vig was the very person who had forced her out of the Arno estate. Roland proceeded to speak about Zachary's marriage to a 9-year-old child, but Jacob interrupted him, insisting that the Viscount apologize to Bianca. However, the Count swiftly intervened, stating that they needed to depart as the wind was too chilly for Bianca. As they started to leave, Jacob surprised everyone by taking Bianca's hand and kissing it, claiming that their encounter was a result of divine intervention. He even offered to send medicine to aid Bianca's recovery, but the Count firmly asserted that his wife would only take medicine from him. During their departure, the second prince couldn't help but entertain a dreadful thought. On their journey, Bianca couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment, realizing that she had become a valuable asset to her husband. Later that night, the Count urgently summoned 3 captains to his quarters, revealing that Jacob had taken an interest in Bianca. Upon hearing this, Robert was incensed, as it was a blatant insult to the Arno name. As a result, the Count issued a command to the captains to prevent any encounters between Bianca and Jacob. Zachary expressed his regret at bringing his wife to Laos, knowing that he could have avoided this entire situation. The Count's anger flared, threatening to inflict harm on Jacob if he dared to interfere, emphasizing how invaluable Bianca was to him. The following day, a doctor arrived to see Bianca and prescribed her medication to aid her recovery. Gradually, her health improved, and the doctor recommended that she take more strolls in the fresh air. One day, Bianca donned her finest clothes and ventured to the garden with her guards. They happened upon Countess d'Aveville and several other ladies who cordially invited Bianca for tea. However, she politely declined, stating that she only drank the tea allowed by her husband. One of the women noticed a valuable piece of jewelry adorning the Countess's neck, and her behavior suddenly became odd. As Bianca moved on, Sabaro noticed a familiar face among the women, but couldn't recall who it was exactly. He soon realized that it was Auntie, the maid whom Bianca had slapped and driven away from Arno. During the tea party, the countesses were discussing Bianca when Auntie approached them, offering to divulge more information about her former mistress. Intrigued, the women asked her to share more details. Meanwhile, Sabaro reminded Yvonne and Bianca about the woman he had seen in the crowd. Later on, in her room, Bianca was contemplating whether to confide in the Count about her time-traveling abilities. She also wanted to warn him about Jacob's future betrayal of the country, but she wasn't sure if the Count would believe her. Ultimately, she decided to wait until her relationship with the Count grew stronger so that he would trust her words. While changing, Caspar informed the Count that they had encountered Auntie during their walk in the park. The Count complimented Bianca's appearance and her lovely dress, unaware of the brewing situation regarding Auntie and her possible revelations about his wife. Yvonne approached the Countess and informed her of an upcoming tournament in which 4 individuals from Arno would participate, 3 captains and the Count himself. The tournament was a competition of knights on horseback, where the objective was to remain on a horse running at breakneck speed. Winning the tournament was considered a great honor, as the champion would be awarded the Eternal Golden Rose, a coveted prize from the Laos tournament. The winner of the tournament was expected to give the rose to their beloved, who would be in attendance at the event. Yvonne assured Bianca that the Count would undoubtedly win the prize and present it to her. However, Bianca urged the Count not to compete in the tournament, as things were unfolding differently this time around, and there was a chance he could perish in the tournament instead of in battle. Saburo reassured everyone that the tournament was a special occasion dedicated to Prince Albert's engagement day, and only the most skilled knights had been chosen to participate. He added that there was no need to worry about the Count's safety, as his opponent would become powerless against him. Despite this, the Count suggested that Bianca not attend the tournament to avoid witnessing any violence. However, Bianca was concerned about the potential rumors that could arise if she failed to show up, which could negatively impact the Count's reputation. In response, the Count proposed that Bianca stay in her room and avoid attending the tournament altogether. The young woman exited the room, and the Count shared with the captains that he felt compelled to participate in the tournament to demonstrate to Jacob and his servants that his wife was not easily approached. As the event drew nearer, Bianca secluded herself in her room, refusing to speak with the Count. Zachary advised Yvonne that if Bianca was too unwell to attend the tournament, she should not feel obligated to do so. Following this discussion, the Count departed, leaving only Caspar and Yvonne in the hallway. Yvonne promised Casper her unwavering support at the tournament the following day. The day had arrived, and the tournament had sparked immense interest, not only among the aristocrats but also among the common folk. Count Arno was widely expected to take the first place, leaving the rest to compete for second place. The contenders for the runner-up spot were the Knights of Arno and the second prince, Jacob. Upon hearing this, Bianca's thoughts drifted to a potential conspiracy between Jacob and Aragon, which could lead to the Count's demise in the upcoming war. As Bianca was lost in thought, she heard strange noises behind her and demanded whoever was making them to be quiet. To her surprise, she turned around to see Fernan standing in front of her. Described as a handsome man with a beautiful voice, Fernan had come to the Laos tournament in search of a young girl to become his patroness. The young man caught the attention of many girls, but his heart was captured by the stunning Bianca. He confessed his love to her at first sight, but Bianca declined, taking her friend Yvonne with her, claiming that she needed to talk to her husband. Fernan quickly realized that Bianca was not an ordinary girl, but a married aristocrat. As she walked away, Bianca couldn't fathom how she had ever been drawn to such a frivolous person. Throughout the night, Bianca occupied herself by knitting lace to present to Zachary at the tournament, hoping it would gain recognition. Saburo approached her and revealed that if he emerged victorious, he intended to gift the golden flower to the Countess as a show of gratitude for hosting the event. Bianca was taken aback by this announcement but wished both Saburo and Robert success. Following that, the girl ventured into the tent and came upon the Count, donning his resplendent attire. She presented him with the lace and wished for his safe return from the tournament. In response, he pledged to dedicate his triumph to Bianca. Among the esteemed guests in attendance were Victor de Severin, Gautier de Severin, the ruler of the Castilla Empire, and Garcia, the daughter of the King of Castilla. While sitting in the stands, Yvonne espied Princess Odeli seated to the right of Gautier. The competition commenced with two knights dueling fiercely, the victor bestowing a flower upon his beloved. The girl beamed with joy, but Bianca couldn't comprehend why she was so jubilant given the perilous nature of the sport, which could have resulted in the death of her beloved. Subsequently, the judges declared the next participant as Ivan de Blanchefort, prompting Bianca to become anxious about her brother's abilities since she knew he was not a proficient knight. Although the Blanchefort family was known for producing exceptional knights, Bianca's father, Count Blanchefort, and her brother, Sir Ivan, were more skilled in riding than in combat. Thus, she believed that Ivan would not fare well in a knight's tournament. However, to her surprise, Ivan emerged victorious in the battle and presented her with a golden rose. Afterwards, Casper took the stage, triumphing in the battle and gifting Yvonne with a golden flower. Surprisingly, Fernan joined the girls, but Bianca did not welcome his presence. The judge proceeded to announce the next participant, who turned out to be Jacob de Severin. The second prince emerged victorious and approached Bianca to offer her a flower. Initially, she was reluctant to accept it, but eventually took it to avoid any negative gossip about her. Observing this exchange, Fernan was taken aback since he knew Bianca was married. By presenting a rose to another man's wife, the prince had essentially diminished her husband's status. In the meantime, the Count exited his tent and overheard two women discussing Bianca's rendezvous with other men in the garden. Fernan sat on a bench, eagerly awaiting the appearance of Bianca's husband to assess his skills. Suddenly, the judge announced the next participant, the hero of Severin, Zachary de Arno. Fernan was taken aback upon realizing that the Count was Bianca's spouse. The battle began. The Count emerged victorious and presented the golden flower to his wife, Bianca. He also instructed her to attend the final round of the tournament as he was confident of his easy victory in the coming days. Following his directive, Bianca stayed in her room and continued with her lace-making for the next 2 days. In a shocking turn of events, Saburo entered her room and informed her that Robert had fought against the second prince seeking vengeance for Bianca, but unfortunately lost and sustained injuries. Saburo also shared that he himself battled against the prince from Castile, who proved to be a formidable opponent. The countess was plagued by insomnia that night due to the events that had transpired, and nightmares prevented her from getting any rest. The following day, she arose and prepared for the ultimate round. Jacob strode into the tent where the Count and Robert were standing, expressing a desire to learn from Count Arno. He proceeded to cast aspersions on Robert's knighthood, claiming that he was unworthy of the title after yesterday's defeat. Robert was incensed, but the Count urged him to remain calm and ignore Jacob's provocations. The prince disclosed that he intended to present the golden rose to Bianca if he emerged victorious, which roused the Count's ire. Nevertheless, he managed to keep his composure and not allow Jacob to agitate him. Jacob knew he couldn't vanquish Zachary, a formidable knight, but he viewed this as his sole opportunity to obtain the golden rose for Bianca and vowed to do whatever it took to accomplish his goal. The ultimate round commenced, and Caspar and the Prince of Castile rode into the ring. The judge laid down the rules. If a participant falls off their horse, they automatically forfeit the battle. The skirmish began, but ultimately, Caspar fell from his horse, leading to his defeat. Witnessing his loss, Yvonne decided to comfort him in his moment of distress. Meanwhile, the Prince of Castile surprised the entire audience by presenting the rose to Princess Odella. In the interim, Yvonne sought out Caspar and embraced him, assuring him that she was content with just one rose. In another part of the arena, Sabaro regaled Bianca with the tale of how he and the captains had advised the Count to seek out a paramour a year prior. However, the Count had grown furious with them and had taken no action. Sabaro went on to state that the Count had been looking after Bianca all this while. Meanwhile, the battle between Prince Jacob and Zachary de Arno was underway in the ring. It was apparent that Zachary emerged as the victor by adeptly dismounting Jacob from his horse. Observing this, Prince Gautier realized that the Count would emerge victorious in the final as he possessed immense strength. Meanwhile, the Count approached Bianca, presenting her with a flower and indicating that they would soon proceed to a locale where he could bear his emotions to her. The Count reminisced about how he had grasped Bianca's hand at their wedding, but had been unsure if he could spend the rest of his life with her since she had been so young at the time. As the girl matured, he gifted her with an ornament. Even though he spent most of his days on the battlefield, upon his return, he noticed that the child's countenance had vanished and Bianca had blossomed into a woman. The Count almost fell in love with her, but suppressed his emotions because of his responsibility toward her. Returning to the present, the Count engaged in the ultimate duel against the Prince of Castile and vanquished him with ease, becoming the absolute champion of the tournament. He collected the golden rose from the king and bestowed it upon Bianca, expressing gratitude for her presence at the event and her unwavering support. Overwhelmed by their emotions for each other, the couple shared a kiss, surprising all those around them. Prior to the tournament, many believed that there was no love between the Count and Bianca, but their kiss dispelled all doubts. During the embrace, the Count whispered to Bianca that he would come to her that night, and they would spend the night together. As the magnificent tournament came to a close, the spectators dispersed and headed back to their homes. This event proved to be a remarkable opportunity for individuals to grasp each other's emotions. Following Zachary's victory, everyone was inspired by the Count's triumph in the tournament. They indulged in drinking and exclaimed that they felt secure knowing that they had such a robust defender in Zachary de Arno. Several women admired the lace on the Count's arm and envied Bianca for being the spouse of a hero. As night fell, the Count entered Bianca's room and they began talking about the kiss they shared earlier. The couple kissed again and Bianca realized how much she loved her husband. They spent the night together, lost in each other's embrace. Meanwhile, Fernand sat in the park and regretted spending all his time on Bianca, only to find out that she was married to Zachary de Arno. He was even more upset as he never found a girl for himself at the tournament. Suddenly, Ronald approached him and suggested he continue courting Bianca. Fernand agreed, but said he would need payment. Ronald gave him a bag of gold coins and promised to write a letter of recommendation for Fernand to attend the banquet that would be held in honor of Zachary's victory in the tournament. Ronald commanded the boy to perform tasks in a specific sequence to impress the Countess of Arno and win her affection. Fernand agreed to undertake the assignment and bid farewell to Ronald. Later, the Viscount informed Jacob that he had carried out the instructions, prompting the second prince to smirk playfully. The following day, Yvonne entered Bianca's chamber to provide a massage, but the Count intervened, insisting that Bianca required rest after a taxing day. Zachary assured Yvonne that he would aid Bianca in getting dressed upon her awakening. Yvonne then departed, and Bianca promptly awoke to find the Count standing before her. The pair proceeded to the bathroom, where Bianca realized that half a year had elapsed since her return, during which time she had engaged in a plethora of activities she had never done before, including lace-making, running a household, horseback riding, and visiting the capital of Laos. Most notably, Bianca had fallen in love with the Count and understood that she had been granted a second chance at life for a purpose, to rescue Zachary from death. As the evening arrived, Yvonne chose to dress up the Countess, and the outcome was impeccable. Caspar entered the chamber and announced that the Count was already waiting for them. Bianca wished to gift Yvonne her nanny's pearls, and Caspar assisted in placing the necklace around Yvonne's neck. Suddenly, the Count appeared, exuding charm and handsomeness. He expressed gratitude to Bianca for selecting his outfit and complimented her on her own stunning appearance. During their journey, Bianca pondered over ways to save the Count. However, noticing his wife's pensive demeanor, the Count advised her to not dwell on any worries as they were to celebrate his victory that day. The tournament, held in honor of the Severin and Castile Union, became a cherished event. Zachary and the Countess made their way to the festivities, where they were greeted by their friends. The Count observed that Saboro had donned his attire once more, but refrained from bickering and instead praised Saboro's appearance. The Emperor and Princess Odeli also graced the event, and the celebration was about to commence. Bianca sat at the festive table and caught sight of Fernand in the distance. Meanwhile, the boy pondered over ways to extricate Bianca from the situation, but it proved to be a formidable task as her husband remained seated beside her throughout the event. Suddenly, Bianca overheard others discussing her appearance, claiming that the Countess of Arno was more beautiful than Princess Odeli. However, Bianca didn't take kindly to such comparisons, knowing that the Emperor's daughter was the fairest maiden in all of Severin. Despite her cold and strict demeanor, many suitors pursued her, only to be rejected, which made her a desirable catch. At the festive table, the Viscount Vig and the second prince engaged in a discussion about Bianca. Jacob professed his love for her at first sight, but showed no interest in marriage. Ronald dismissed love as a mere fleeting game that only interests two parties for a while. Zachary interrupted the conversation, stating that it was not appropriate for a Viscount to engage in such talk, especially considering that he was not one to be swayed by sweetness on the battlefield. This sparked a small argument between the men, with Zachary defending Bianca's honor. The servants and maids were surprised, having heard rumors that Bianca was involved with her bodyguards, but it became clear that she was devoted to her husband. Bianca remained steadfast, refusing to give in to the malicious rumors. She suspected that the source of the rumors was nearby and was proven right when she encountered a woman in the garden who was responsible for spreading the rumors throughout Severin. The Countess then inquired about Bianca's interests. When asked about her interests, the girl replied that she was learning to ride horses and enjoyed embroidery, as well as teaching women in her county how to weave lace. She even gave her husband a lace she had woven during a tournament. The Countess was surprised, as they had previously heard negative rumors about Bianca, but now realized that she was a good person. However, Countess Bolnay accused Bianca of pretending to be someone else and mistreating her former maid, who had been kicked out of Arno's estate in the middle of winter due to Bianca's jealousy towards her husband. One man in the room doubted Bolnay's claims, but she insisted that they were true, as there was a witness. Suddenly, Auntie entered the room and was shocked to see Bianca. Despite the tense situation, Bianca confidently explained that she had fired the maid for flirting with her husband and publicly insulting the Countess. She also revealed that Auntie had been spreading false rumors about Arno's personal affairs. This revelation left Bolnay and the other countesses surprised. One of the counts ordered the guards to escort Auntie out of the room. Bianca then approached Bolnay and asked about her family background. Bolnay identified herself as Céline de Bolnay, the daughter of Count Bolnay. Bianca took responsibility for the incident and asked her father to apologize to the banquet host for the inconvenience caused by Bolnay's behavior. The king intervened and reprimanded Lady Bolnay for disturbing the banquet, instructing Count Bolnay to take charge of his daughter's education and manners. He also banned the Countess from visiting Laos during her re-education. Princess Odeli, who was sitting next to the king, offered to take Bolnay as her own servant to teach her well. Odeli then asked Bolnay to apologize to Bianca, and Bianca forgave the countess for spreading false rumors, wishing her well in her studies with the princess. With the rumors put to rest, everyone began to ask Bianca many questions. At the banquet, Zachary informed his wife that he would be stepping out briefly. Bianca also decided to take a breath of fresh air and made her way to the balcony where she encountered Fernand. He held her tightly, expressing his relief that they were alone. Meanwhile, Count Bolnay approached Jacob to lament that he had been banished from the capital due to the chaos caused by Selene. Bolnay implored the second prince to aid him by having his daughter serve as Princess Odeli's personal maid in order to uncover private information about the princess's life. However, Jacob was interrupted by the sight of Bianca and Fernand embracing on the balcony. Overwhelmed with emotion, Jacob considered rejecting Bolnay's request since he was deeply in love with Bianca. He informed Bolnay that meddling in the affairs of others was ill-advised before departing. As Jacob left, Count Arnaud emerged from behind Bolnay and ominously predicted that Bolnay's lands would soon be taken over by someone else. After hearing Count Arnaud's warning, Bolnay realized that Zachary had plans to seize his lands. Arnaud proposed a deal. If Bolnay returned home and taught his daughter proper manners, Zachary would not take his lands. Terrified, Bolnay apologized to Zachary and hurriedly left the room. Meanwhile, Fernand and Bianca were in the park where he attempted to kiss her. Yvonne appeared and pushed Fernand away, accidentally injuring his face in the process. Enraged, Fernand claimed that Bianca wanted his kiss and accused her of being responsible for his injury. He also revealed that he had been paid and ordered to seduce the Countess of Arnaud. Jacob intervened and warned Fernand that he would face consequences for his behavior towards a noblewoman in the palace. Frightened, Fernand confessed and was promptly killed by Jacob with a sword. The next scene shows Zachary returning to the banquet hall and realizing that Bianca was missing. Casper informed him that she had been in the yard for quite some time. Upon hearing Casper's news, the Count frantically rushed outside in search of his wife. There, he found Jacob, Yvonne, and Bianca. Jacob embraced Bianca and proclaimed that he could satisfy her better than her husband. Bianca realized that Jacob had fallen in love with her, but before she could respond, Zachary's voice interrupted them. Startled, Bianca quickly broke away from Jacob's grasp. The Count approached and held Bianca tightly, begging for her forgiveness and confessing that he did not want to leave her alone. Meanwhile, Casper discovered Yvonne unconscious in the garden. The Count was bewildered by the scene, and Jacob casually explained that he had dealt with the man who had been flirting with Bianca and Yvonne. Bianca was livid, emphasizing that only her family and those she permitted could address her by name. Jacob laughed, asserting that her father had arranged her marriage for political gain. Jacob was flooded with memories of his past after the speech, particularly the tragic loss of his mother and the absence of anyone to truly love him. As the Countess grew weary, Bianca and the Count made the decision to depart from their current location. Later that evening, Bianca confided in Zachary about the events that had transpired in the garden, including witnessing the second prince commit murder and confess his love. Concerned about Jacob's involvement with Aragon and the impending war that would result in Zachary's death, Bianca realized that the future she envisioned might not come to fruition. Overcome with anger, she urged Zachary to kill the second prince and later instructed him to assassinate Jacob during the war, framing it as the work of their enemies. After hearing Bianca's plan, the Count decided to wait for the opportune moment during the war to take out his opponent. The Countess expressed a desire to improve her swordsmanship skills in order to better defend herself. The following morning, Bianca entered Yvonne's room to thank the maid for saving her life and wished Yvonne a speedy recovery. As they departed, the Countess instructed Casper to look after Yvonne. Zachary informed Bianca that Robert would be teaching her swordsmanship starting that day. In another scene, Zachary and Blanchefort were having dinner when the latter expressed his sadness about not knowing when he would see Bianca again. The Count reassured him that Bianca was the head of the Arnaud family and they could visit her together with Ivan at any time. When Ivan inquired about Bianca's whereabouts, Zachary joked that she was busy learning how to knit flowers in Odell's garden. Meanwhile, in the garden, Robert was teaching Bianca how to wield a sword. In the end, Bianca came to the realization that Robert had offered to teach her swordsmanship out of guilt for losing his last fight against the second prince. As Bianca was about to leave, she and Robert heard strange noises coming from the bushes and discovered that Madame Bolnay had been spying on them in order to spread rumors. Princess Odeli suddenly appeared, disguised as a maid, and Bianca was struck by her incomparable beauty. Odeli presented a bouquet of roses to Bianca and a single white rose to Robert, assuring them that Bolnay would not spread any rumors about the events that had taken place in the garden. Bianca then visited her family and urged her father not to participate in the impending war, even if ordered to do so. Upon hearing this, Ivan stated that the Blanchefort family's loyalty was to the kingdom of Severin, and therefore they had a duty to serve their country if called upon. The Count embraced Bianca, assuring her that if anything were to happen to him during the war, she could rely on the two of them. Ivan and Gustav then agreed to follow Bianca's lead and do their utmost to avoid the conflict. As the Blanchefort family departed the dinner table, the Count became curious about where Bianca had obtained her information regarding the impending war. He began to suspect that his wife did not trust him completely. Upon entering the tower, the Count presented Robert with a bouquet of flowers before retiring to his chamber with Bianca. Bianca was unsure if her husband would believe that she had been leading a double life and that war with Aragon was on the horizon due to Jacob's collusion. After much contemplation, she approached Zachary with the intention of divulging everything to him. However, Zachary assured her that he was a patient person and would wait for her to be ready to speak. Bianca was elated and embraced her husband tightly. Subsequently, the protagonist gifted Princess Odeli with a piece of lace she had crafted herself, along with some additional lace to share with whomever she pleased. To Bianca's surprise, Princess Odeli extended an invitation for a weekend walk. Meanwhile, in another scene, Jacob expressed his longing for Bianca and his desire to see her once again. During a conversation between the two women, Odeli proposed a visit to the cathedral to make a wish before Bianca's departure. That evening, Bianca recounted the princess's suggestion to the Count, who granted her permission to go. He expressed regret that he could not accompany her due to a lack of time. As Bianca lay in bed, she reminisced about her conversation with Odeli in the princess's garden. Odeli had spoken of her two brothers and their distinctive clothing styles. She also revealed that arranged marriages were common in Severin, and consequently, men often ignored their wives' desires, viewing marriage as a matter of convenience. Odeli had delayed her own marriage, equating being married to being single. The Count realized that Bianca had formed a strong bond with the princess, and Bianca expressed her desire to be Odeli's best friend, as she had never had a sister in whom she could confide. In the late hours of the night, with Zachary already asleep, the Countess pondered whether her return to this life was the will of God. The following day, a scene unfolded in the Cathedral of Laos, where Priest John sought an audience with Archbishop Francis. Francis, however, was furious, having ordered not to be disturbed during his prayer to God. Despite this, John mentioned that a few days prior, he had heard that Princess Odeli intended to visit their cathedral, and indeed, she had arrived with a companion who presented a gift in a box. When Francis opened the casket, he was astonished at the contents, a beautifully crafted candle wrapped in lace. He inquired as to the woman's identity, and John revealed her to be Bianca d'Arnaud. Meanwhile, Princess d'Aveville sought out Bianca to apologize for her maid, Auntie, who had caused significant trouble for the Countess. Bianca readily forgave d'Aveville and extended her hand in friendship to the princess. John arrived and informed them that the Archbishop wished to meet the Countess of Arnaud. Bianca and John departed, leaving the Countess of d'Aveville astounded, as Francis had never invited anyone to his room before. Odeli recollected how Bianca had given the chest to her at the cathedral's entrance, and the princess realized that the Countess had a secret gift in addition to the lace that no one knew about. In the chamber, Francis inquired about the candle and praised Bianca for crafting a sculpture from it, deeming it ingenious. Bianca was aware that the Archbishop would appreciate the piece that Nicola had fashioned in Arnaud. Francis requested a couple more candles to exhibit to the highest priest, and Bianca revealed that several works remained in her possession and that she would prepare as many as necessary. Francis expressed gratitude to the Countess and offered to recite prayers for Bianca. However, the girl was interested in the miracle of regression, which could transport people back to the past, and chose to question him about it. Upon hearing Bianca's question about regression, the Archbishop clarified that the phenomenon is known as foretelling the future in the Church. Bianca further questioned why they differentiate between the two concepts. Francis explained that regression is only recognized in the minds of saints, and God reveals the worst possible future to them so that they may strive to create a better one. The Archbishop realized that Bianca had recently awoken from a long period of slumber and inquired if something had occurred that she wished to avoid. Bianca did not respond and stated that it was time for her to depart. However, Francis did not want to let her go without first checking her for regression. Bianca agreed, and the Archbishop began the ritual. During the ceremony, Francis inquired about the type of future that Bianca desired. With tears in her eyes, Bianca expressed her desire to witness her husband alive in the future. Following the ritual, it was discovered that Bianca was considered holy. Francis advised that the Countess should be registered with the Church to receive assistance, but Bianca declined, as she did not wish to share the news with anyone, including her husband. Subsequently, Bianca departed from the cathedral and encountered Yvonne outside. She embraced her tightly, declaring her love. The following day, Bianca completed her flower arrangement lessons with Robert and spent time with Princess Odeli and Countess d'Aveville, who even visited her on the day of her departure from the estate. Everyone bid them farewell, and the Arnaud family left the city. As they were departing, Bianca glimpsed Jacob's face through the window and vowed to prevent the future he desired from occurring. At nightfall, the group decided to halt and selected a picturesque location to camp for the night. Bianca settled into her carriage and reflected upon the events that occurred at the cathedral. Although the Archbishop allotted her little time, she knew that she needed to speak with Zachary first, but she was uncertain if he would comprehend the tumultuous nature of her past life. The Count appeared from the shadows, and Bianca confided in him that she desired to sleep beside him in the carriage, as she would be too cold on her own. Zachary bid his companions good night and made his way to Bianca's carriage. Unable to resist their desires, they shared a passionate embrace and spent the night together. The following day, an episode unfolds in Arnaud featuring the maids chatting about the butler's cheerful demeanor. Vincent is in high spirits because the sales of lace have surged, resulting in a substantial profit. Meanwhile, Zachary and Bianca have returned to Arnaud. Shortly thereafter, Catherine d'Aveville arrives at the estate for the first time with her boyfriend Marco. During the visit, Marco proposes creating an industrial production of lace, and the Countess expresses interest in discussing the matter further with him. She instructs Vincent to escort Zachary and the Count of d'Aveville to the lace workshop, while she meets with Catherine alone. During their conversation, d'Aveville mentions Nicola's magical candles, which are highly sought after in Laos at premium prices. In a subsequent scene, the Counts are seen discussing on the field. Marco notes that the saint has reappeared after a lengthy absence and speculates whether Bianca knows anything about the saint, having reportedly met with the Archbishop. Upon hearing this, the Count comprehended why Bianca had been meeting with the Archbishop, as it was likely connected to the saint's appearance. Count d'Aveville mentioned that Bianca was the last person the Archbishop had seen, and that the saint's appearance had prompted Aragon to propose a temporary truce. Zachary was taken aback by this revelation. Meanwhile, Catherine informed Bianca at the estate that the saint had appeared in Laos and that it was problematic for Aragon as it was an enemy state. Catherine expressed her concern that if war broke out, Marco would be forced to participate. She was anxious about this because they had not yet had children, and if something were to happen to Count d'Aveville, her father would insist on her remarrying since the d'Aveville family required a successor. Bianca asked her friend if she loved her husband, and Catherine responded that she did. The girl went on to recount how she had first met Marco and how they eventually got married. The passing of time brought deep autumn, with All Saints' Day quickly approaching. Robert continued to instruct Bianca in swordsmanship, commending her for her improved grip on the dagger. He remarked that her hands held great potential, and she would become even more formidable in the future. Thanking Robert for the training, the Countess departed for the estate. Along the way, she observed simple Christians and pondered what would become of them in the event of war. Robert reassured her, stating that the knights would shelter them within the estate of Count Arnaud at the onset of war. He added that the castle was designed by Zachary with ample space and provisions to accommodate everyone. Upon arriving at the office, Bianca requested that Vincent present Zachary's will, but he hesitated to comply. Undeterred, the Countess directed her bodyguard to escort Vincent out of her path. She proceeded to retrieve the will from the bookshelf, stored within a chest. Upon reading the will, Bianca became enraged. Shortly after, Vincent entered the Count's room and informed him that Bianca had read the will. In a hurry, Zachary rushed to his wife's room. Inside, Bianca had discovered that if Zachary died without any children, all their property and land would be inherited by her parents, the Blanchefort family. Furthermore, their marriage would be considered null and void, and Bianca would have to return to Blanchefort. The Countess was puzzled as to why the Blanchefort family would receive all their property, as they had not contributed to Arnaud's prosperity in any way. It became clear to Bianca that the Count had been taking birth control pills to prevent her from getting pregnant, and that he could send her back to Blanchefort at any time. Zachary quickly explained that he had no intentions of sending her away, but had made the will to ensure that Bianca would be provided for if he were to die in the war. He had also been taking birth control pills because Bianca was young and he did not want to risk her life. The Count shared a story about how his mother had married his father at a young age and had died after giving birth to him. He did not want the same fate to befall Bianca. The Count then asked Bianca if there was any other reason why they needed to have a child soon, but she remained silent, and he left the room. As time passed, the Day of Saints finally arrived. In celebration of the occasion, the local Christians prepared gifts for the Count and Countess. One man offered Bianca a pair of gloves made from marten skin, which she graciously accepted and promised to cherish. Meanwhile, Caspar proposed to Yvonne, and Robert and Saboro took a walk to talk in private. While outside, they spotted a man from the Severin family riding towards them on a horse. He delivered the news that Prince Gautier had died after falling from his horse. Upon hearing this, Zachary rushed to the capital to meet with Count Blanchefort. The Count explained that the throne was meant to pass to Prince Gautier, but his untimely death complicated the situation. Now, Prince Albert, Gautier's son, will have to contend with Prince Jacob for the throne. Jacob arrived shortly after and exchanged greetings with everyone before inquiring about Bianca. However, before Zachary could answer, a servant burst into the room, announcing that Aragon had declared war against Severin. As Bianca lay on the bed, memories flooded her mind of the honorable death of Prince Gautier during the war. However, something was amiss. The future was changing. Yvonne entered the Countess's room and delivered news of the Count's arrival at the Arnaud estate. Bianca sensed that something had gone wrong. As Zachary approached the cathedral, he commanded his soldiers to gather the people of the district and relocate them to a safer place. Bianca realized that Zachary was preparing for battle. Upon hearing of Prince Gautier's tragic demise and its link to Jacob, Aragon reignited the war effort. Suddenly, Bianca awoke to find Zachary standing before her. He revealed that she had fainted, but the Countess was deeply distressed by her husband's departure for war. Zachary reassured her that he would return victorious, as always. However, Bianca warned him that this time, he might not come back. Upon hearing Bianca's warning, Zachary was taken aback and asked her how she could be so sure. Through tears, Bianca revealed that she was living a second life, and Zachary recalled his wife's prophetic abilities, finally comprehending the gravity of the situation. However, the Countess lamented that the future was not what she had expected, as everything had become so unpredictable. Despite her plea for Zachary to stay out of the war, the Count knew that Severin's borders would be in peril if he did not act. Bianca suggested enlisting the Holy Knights to join the battle, and Zachary realized that his wife was indeed a saint. Moved by her love, the Count declared that he could not bear to be apart from her. Bianca implored Zachary to promise her that he would return alive from the war and, in exchange, she would bear him a child. The Count vowed to keep his promise and began to kiss her passionately. As nightfall approached, preparations were made for the impending war. Bianca slipped away from the estate and approached Saboro and Robert, urging them to emerge victorious and return home safely. Robert promised to do so and entrusted the Countess with his dagger, which she had been practicing with. Bianca then approached Zachary and presented him with a lace, reminding him of the promise he had made to her. The Count embraced his wife and swore to return alive. Additionally, Bianca instructed him to eliminate the second prince. As the knights departed, Bianca called for Vincent and tasked him with sending letters to her father, the Archbishop of Laus Cathedral, and Princess Odeli. In the following scene, Princess Odeli was shown in her garden with Selene, beaming with joy upon receiving a letter from Bianca. The following day, Jacob approached his late brother's wife and offered to become Albert's guardian, but was interrupted by Odeli, who claimed her father had given her permission to become the guardian. Jacob appeared puzzled by this news. In a subsequent scene, Jacob and the Viscount were shown together. The Viscount appeared distressed and decided to send a letter to someone. On the battlefield, knights and Zachary were shown, with Robert pointing out that their forces were outnumbered and in need of reinforcements. The Count proposed holding the front until reinforcements arrived. Suddenly, Count Marco d'Aveville arrived with his army to help. Zachary suspected that Marco had been sent by Jacob with orders to stop him. To investigate, the Count suggested they take a walk together. During their conversation, Marco revealed that he was an illegitimate child and had received a letter from the Archbishop regarding Bianca, which he had written to her about. However, he quickly realized that she couldn't be deceived. Marco explained that he was at the front to honor his wife's request to help Count Arno. Upon hearing this, Zachary thanked him and advised him to stay safe. The scene shifted to the Aragon headquarters, where a letter had arrived for the commander-in-chief, and upon reading it, he exclaimed that it was their chance. Shortly after, Zachary noticed the Aragon army moving towards the Severan army, which was caught off guard and unprepared. Several months later, winter had set in, and the Count had ordered the local residents to move to the castle. However, the fields were too far away, and many people began to complain. Bianca proposed to Caspar that the castle guard escort the residents to the fields, and he agreed that it was possible. Bianca then visited the estates around the castle daily to ensure everything was going smoothly. About a month later, Bianca returned to the Christians to check on them, but news about the war had suspiciously subsided, and letters from the messenger had stopped coming. After some time had passed, Bianca spotted something floating in the river, and upon closer inspection, she realized that it was the lace she had given to Zachary. Meanwhile, in the capital of Laos, Albert presented a gift to Princess Odeli to be given to the king before leaving with Blanchefort. Odeli later presented the gift to her father, which included a wreath for his head. However, she discovered that Jacob was not in Laos. Back at the river, Bianca and the others examined the lace and concluded that it was not the one given by Countess Zachary. Caspar suggested that someone had intentionally thrown it in the river, but the source of the river was on the opposite side of the battle, making it unlikely that it had come from the battlefield. Bianca decided to explore the upper reaches of the Laos River and set out with Caspar and a small search party. While in the birch forest, she encountered Jacob, who expressed how much he had missed her. He also revealed that Zachary had gone to war without any allies, causing Bianca to realize that the letter she had sent to the Archbishop had not been delivered. While conversing, Jacob revealed that he had been blocking Arno's messages about the war to keep the truth hidden. The second prince then informed Bianca that Zachary had died in the war. Upon hearing this news, Bianca collapsed to her knees and remembered Zachary's promises to her. She was confused as to why things were not the same as in her past life. Jacob explained that Zachary had died without an heir, and Viscount Vig was planning to seize Arno's lands for himself. However, Jacob vowed to protect Bianca and prevent Vig from taking over all of Arno's lands, as he planned to ascend to the throne soon. Bianca revealed that she knew about Jacob's conspiracy with Aragon and accused the second prince of causing Zachary's death. In a fit of anger, she grabbed her sword and charged towards Jacob. However, he stopped her and professed his love for her. Caspar suddenly appeared and warned Jacob to stay away from the Countess. Bianca and Caspar then left to return to Arno, where they encountered Robert and Saboro on the way. The couple informed her that the Count was waiting for her. Zachary had instructed Bianca to continue with her life, no matter what. He also warned her that the second prince would attempt to capture Arno's lands. The Count ordered his wife to protect their land and their child in her womb. Bianca vowed to protect their beautiful land, which would eventually become their child's home. Following her farewell to Zachary, the girl suddenly awoke in her bed, having lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Jacob and Aragon were seen discussing an attack on Arno's lands before the Count's return. As this was happening, Zachary transformed into an ordinary hunter and arrived at the battlefield, where people were collecting the bodies of Aragonese soldiers. Upon hearing that news from the front lines was being intercepted, Zachary decided to investigate further. He encountered a scout from Aragon and killed him without hesitation. Zachary also informed Robert that he had been unable to locate his missing helmet, which was suspicious. Back in the knight's tent, there were discussions about someone controlling information about the war. Zachary believed that the second prince was behind this scheme. Count d'Aveville suspected that Jacob had stolen Zachary's helmet and was spreading false rumors about his death. He was unsure of what to do next. After a considerable period of time, the long-awaited day arrived. The second prince, accompanied by the Aragonese army, arrived at the Arno estate. The scene then shifts to a flashback of Caspar and Bianca returning from the river and Caspar instructing everyone to prepare Arno Castle for a siege. The people gathered and stocked up on enough food, anticipating a siege since the Count had left. This was to ensure that Arno could hold out until Zachary's return. When they discovered that Jacob had threatened Bianca, the inhabitants were outraged and harbored a deep hatred for the second prince. In the present, Bianca called everyone together and informed them that if anyone wished to leave, they could do so by following the forest path that led to Blanchefort's lands. However, upon hearing the Countess's words, the inhabitants pledged to stay and defend Arno's lands until the end. Bianca then headed to the tower and declared to Jacob and the Aragonese that she would not abandon the castle under any circumstances and would fight to the last. If you don't want to miss my new videos, support the channel by subscribing and don't forget to like the video.